Mhm.
Appreciate you all for joining us today. So as I had mentioned, we have the luxury of having our CSU San Marcos Department of Sociology and Criminology and Justice Studies joining us today. We have our faculty from our CSU sister campus, and I'm excited to have them in our space to connect with you all and to share more about their department and also the power of going to graduate school and finding your path in your career. So we're hoping that we can pour into you today, and we encourage you to share this with your peers should you find something of value that you want to share on. So as this will be recorded, so we can also share it on our YouTube channel, as well as the Career Center YouTube channel, so that way we can spread the message and keep building during this time of distance learning. So with that, I'd like to pass the mic over to Dr. Richelle Swan. Take it away, Doc.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We met in person a few years ago with some Cal State Dominguez Hills folks coming down to Cal State San Marcos, which is in northern San Diego County, if you've never been. And we had a great time. And usually I would start off by asking the folks here, if you have any particular interests related to either our program or something more general, or if you wanted to introduce yourselves. I'm not sure if that is the plan here today. Mr. Cuevas, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we definitely have the space to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and popcorn it to Brother Anthony to get us started.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I do have a huge interest in applying to sociology, especially with San Marcos. And I read a lot of work of Dr. Santos and Dr. Bickel. Yeah, I'm really interested in it, in the field of sociology.
Excellent, thank you.
Appreciate it. Perhaps we could have Sylvia share.
I'm actually like a history major, but I was just like kind of curious as to what like a sociology MA was about. So I'm just really here to like get information.
That's great. Appreciate that. And definitely undergraduate is the time to explore. Usually students will start one way, maybe they'll end up double majoring and pick up a minor. So we appreciate you in the space and keeping an open mind. Rosa, would you like to share?
Yeah, I'm a business management major, and I'm thinking of going to graduate school, maybe pursuing law, corporate law.
Appreciate you sharing. Thank you. And then Anais.
Hi.
Did I say that right?
Yes, you say it right, Anais.
Okay.
So I am a journalism major, and I'm very curious about today's seminar. I'm also trying to graduate next year, and I just want to get informed and to see what is this about.
Definitely appreciate you joining us. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're just starting your research, considering, or you already know which graduate program, we're excited to have you in the space. And a lot of this information will be applicable to your journey as well as folks specifically interested in sociology or criminology disciplines.
Excellent. So in terms of, I think we should introduce ourselves real briefly. I know we don't have that much time. So I'm Rochelle Swan. I am the graduate coordinator of the master's program in sociological practice at Cal State San Marcos. One more year and someone else will be the new graduate coordinator. So that'll be exciting. And I've been at Cal State San Marcos for, I believe, around 18 years. It's gone fast. And so I'm really enthusiastic about our undergraduate majors. And of course, what we're talking about today, our master's program, which draws upon our two sets of expertise in the department, which is sociology and criminology and justice studies. So those of us here today happen to be expert seems a little, but I guess, yeah, experts or specialized, that would be better. Specialize in criminology and justice studies, okay? So I'm particularly interested in the sociology of law. That's what I study in various forms. And so I would like my colleagues to briefly introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Juan Santos. I'm an associate professor in the department that I share with Dr. Swan. I'm the executive director of Project Rebound, and I'm also the director of the Criminology and Justice Studies program in Temecula. So I'm pretty stoked about the stuff that I do. I'm originally from LA. I'm from Boyle Heights. I'm first generation in everything. I went to Cal State Dominguez Hills, where I got my master's degree in sociology. I was mentored by some cool people there. And I really appreciated just the diversity of that campus. It's more diverse than any campus I've been at. So I'm really happy that all of you are here and I get to share the space with y'all.
And I'm Christopher Bickel, in sociology, but also kind of specialize in criminology and justice studies. For me, a lot of my work and how I got into wanting to do this kind of work was I wanted to do something important in the world that gave back to the community. You know, for me, growing up and seeing, I was one of the few people who made it out of my neighborhood and went to school. I wanted to make sure that that journey, you know, once I got to school and made it through that door, that I didn't leave that closed. And so a lot of this work in graduate school for me was, I wanted to get into sociology for what it could do for the world. You know, I think some people go into graduate school, you know, oh, I'm going to go into sociology or psychology for the sake of the material itself. For me, I wanted to do something social justice related, and this was the route I could do so. And so I'm really excited here to talk to other folks who are interested in graduate school. Even if you're not interested in our program, just the idea of going to graduate school is something that I always want to talk to folks about, because I want to make sure that that door remains open. And so for me, most of my work was with incarcerated youth. And so a big part of my work now with the department is we're trying to create a not school to prison pipeline, but a prison to school pipe. And so that's a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. So I've got that academic background, but also it's very important for me to do the community work as well.
Excellent. So now you have a sense of where we're coming from. We have a wonderful group of faculty that teach in our program with you know, we'll look at the webpage soon and you'll get a sense of what people are about. But we encourage you to look not only at our website to see what, you know, the faculty are doing, but any program you're interested in applying to for graduate school, you should study their website pretty seriously, right? Look at the faculty, what they've written about their work, read some of their work, see what kind of resources they have for first generation students, students of color, BIPOC students. Look at the whole picture, right? And one of the first things I think that's important to say is we're going to be talking about a master's program here today, but some of you could apply directly to a PhD program as well. So a lot of times, you know, when you learn about going to graduate school, you only hear one slice of the picture, but we're trying to let you know there are many ways to go. Many master's programs to apply to in and outside of state, right? Or even out of the country if you were interested. PhD programs, of course, all over the country. With the right support and getting your application together, you could be very competitive for a PhD program in some cases, right? So do understand that the master's could be a great stepping stone, right, for many different opportunities. So I think that I was going to start by just showing an overview of our master's program, and then Drs. Bickel and Santos were also going to chime in with, you know, advice and answer questions, right? Does that sound good? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Is that a good idea? Okay.
You should be able to do it. I made you co-host.
Okay, excellent. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Let me try that again. Okay. That's not what I was aiming for, but This is a good start. So I do want to show you our website first. So sorry for the few minutes it's taking me here to get this all going. I'm ready now to show you this. Okay, so just to let you know that in terms of where we're coming from, we're interested in sociological practice. In other words, the application of sociology to real world concerns, right? And so Dr. Bickel talked about, you know, the social justice emphasis that he has in his work, and many of us have the same emphasis in our work, right? So we're interested in public sociology. And in terms of how our program's set up, we are set up to be a nighttime program, which you'll notice that a lot of master's programs are either in the day fully or at night. And we chose decades ago to be at night so people could go to school during the day. No, not going to school, go to work during the day. Okay. And so all of our classes are after 5, and we're drawing upon critical sociology in our program. We do accept folks who are coming from other disciplines into our program should they have lots of similar interest and good preparation. So do talk to us if you are, a number of you are coming from different disciplines and you may be interested in pursuing sociology, so we can meet one-on-one with you at some point this semester or next year, whenever you want to talk about, you know, applying. Right now, all of our classes are online, which has been a fun transition. I'm sure that you've all enjoyed it as well. But what do our students do in terms of the paths that people take with a master's of sociology, which is basically what the program is? About a third of our students or more go on to teach in the community college system, teach sociology or criminology and justice studies or ethnic studies or gender studies or things related to what they might study in our program. Another third go into working or creating their own nonprofits, community agencies, etc. And another group of people, which, you know, about a third, let's say, but maybe that's an approximation, go on to PhD programs and earn their doctorate, right? So those are the different paths. And do note when you're applying to a master's program, you don't have to have your future all figured out yet, right? A lot of us never imagined we'd be doing what we're doing right now because we were either introverted people or we just, you know, we didn't have any familiarity with the system of academia and how it worked. So no, you don't have to know everything already. You just take one step, put one foot in front of the other. And if it interests you, it's a great idea to explore it, okay? So in terms of what you want to do for any master's program, like I said, is look around it, okay? So you would not only just look at the master's degree, but you would also look at the undergraduate degrees, different things going on, right? And you can see from our pages that we have a variety of types of information on here, right? I think we have 18 tenure track faculty and lots more lecturers who are helping us in the department, okay? So you can see we have a large group, and that's probably similar to your school and the department you're at Cal State Dominguez Hills, right? Lots of great people working to put together something dynamic and something that you hopefully enjoy. So in terms of this, you know, we have a curriculum that I could show you to give you a sense of what folks do take when they're in the program. I will have to stop sharing and start another page, but just to give you another sense before I log off of our website, if you want to look after this meeting, you can see our current students. Not all of them have posted on here, but I always try to get them to. But lots of great students here, and you might look to see their research interests and see if they dovetail with yours. Then that's a good way to see, you know, is a department a nice fit for me? Are there people that are going to support me here? Almost all of our students are first generation students, and a dynamic group of folks, right? So looking at all sorts of interesting topics related to social justice and sociology. Okay, so do take a look at this. And of course, you're going to want to think about different funding opportunities. The Cal State system might not always be the one with the most funding for graduate school, but it is also one of the most affordable places to go to graduate school. So that's one of the things to think about. We have some alumni here that we show, right? That have put their, some of them have put both words and images here. So you can explore that. And then if you want to apply starting in the summer, this will be updated for the next application cycle. In our situation, and many, we have the spring application review, and we just let in our cohort for fall 2021, right? So Dr. Bickel, Dr. Santos, and several other people put a lot of work into picking the best cohort possible to move forward with us. And how that works is you apply for graduate school. There's a period in which you can apply. Ours runs from October to March of the following year. During that time, you want to reach out to whoever the graduate coordinator is in any department and try to establish a personal connection where you can get information about the program. You want to try to make connections with faculty if you have interest in their research. Some of you today have already noted that you have an interest, for example, in Dr. Bickel and Santos's research. So, after this, you might connect with them and talk about, hey, I'm interested also in studying this, right? Via email. It works really great these days, right? As well as Zoom or some other ways. Okay. In our program, we're looking for folks with a 3.0 around that, right? It's not something that we, it has to definitely be a 3.0 because we look at things holistically. Okay. So if you're right there, we can definitely take that into account. Our application takes into account, how, what in your major, did you do a lot better than you did early on in school? We see that all the time, right? People have their pass through school and they find their footing like their third year sometimes. And so that's okay. But we do want to make sure that you are ready for it, right? In the sense that we want you to be having a good fit with the program, okay? So just note that, there are steps you will take in our department. We don't require the GRE. Okay, so in a lot of other programs, you will need to take a test known as the graduate records exam. And that would be one of the things you have to do for your application. In ours, that is not something you do because we don't think it's the best indicator of how well you'll do in graduate school, okay? But we do ask for other things such as a statement of purpose, which would be your story, right? Your biography. We want your honest, kind of assessment of what you've been through. What have your challenges been? What have been your accomplishments, right? What are your interests and why do you fit with this department? And we can talk more about that later if you'd like. Recommendations for any graduate program, something you can do right now after this meeting or during this meeting is you could jot down 3 current or former instructors that you did really well in their classes, and you would like to ask them for a letter of support, okay? It doesn't mean that you would need it right now if you're graduating. I think all of you might be seniors, but I'm not sure. But say you're graduating in 2 years because you're a junior. You would just start connecting with that person saying, one day I hope to apply to graduate school. I did really well in your class. This is my passion. Let me explain why. And then, kind of make a connection with the instructor who will say, oh yes, I'd be comfortable writing you a strong letter of recommendation. Okay. This is something to do now. Don't wait until the last minute when in a year or two, when you decide to apply to graduate school, and then you have to look back and figure all that out. Right. So that's the recommendation there. And then we have different questions about what your fit might be. You can download them here. Then they rarely change because they're such good questions. We just keep them every year. And then, what are your interests? What's your social justice experience? Do you have any research experience from a class you took, right? How do you show any of the programs you're applying to that you went a bit above the average student in terms of you're involved in the community, you're involved on campus, you've done something that sets you a little bit apart, right? Because everyone's so wonderful, it's really hard to choose, and we unfortunately don't have the resources to let everyone in. Okay. So these are the kinds of things. Think about a writing sample that you would use, right? You've taken a class or two, and what are some great papers you wrote that you may want to share in a graduate application? So that holds true for almost, anything in the social sciences, right, that you might be doing to apply. Okay, so this is a really fast overview. I don't want to take the whole meeting because we have lots of good things to talk about, okay? Dr. Santos and Dr. Bickel, do you have any recommendations of something else I should show from our website?
I think it's good. I think we can kind of open up for questions, make sure that we're kind of addressing folks' questions.
Yeah.
But it's a good overview.
Okay. Same
And if I can, I just want to kind of piggyback off of you and just the importance of when you're looking for graduate schools, look to see the graduate students. As professors, I think we're a pretty honest group of professors at Cal State San Marcos. We're not trying to sell our program in that traditional sense, but most programs will try to do a lot of window dressing. So it's best to talk to the graduate students. The graduate students are always the ones who will kind of give you the lowdown on what's happening in the department. I know when I advise my students now who are going into PhD programs, that's one of the first things you look at. And so if you're interested, for example, in social justice, if you're interested in activism and using sociology towards that end, make sure that when you look at different departments that they have graduate students who are also doing similar work. Because a lot of times you can find those departments that, they see social justice work as being less objective and they're more traditional departments. You won't see their students doing the kind of more social justice oriented work. And so graduate students are one of the best indicators of what program you should go to.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'll add another piece if it's cool with everybody. I always tell folk that if they ever want to get a good feel for the departments that they're applying to, show up when they're not expecting you and just see how they're going to treat you. Just show up and they'll give you, you'll know exactly where you got yourself into. And so if you're going to a PhD program or applying to one, I'm telling you, show up like that and you'll say, hell no, if it's not for you or whatever it is. So nothing better than experiential knowledge.
I think that's great. That's great advice. You might catch us on a bad day, but usually if a bad day is just that, if we were back on campus, that someone's running to a meeting and someone else is running to, things are a little exciting sometimes on campus if we don't know you're coming. But you're right, Dr. Santos. That's really good advice to see. You have to visit if you can. You won't be able, if you apply out of state, you may not be able to visit. And you will do a Zoom or something maybe. But and right now you might not be able to visit as well because of the health conditions. But in any other situation, try to make a trip to the campus, to the department, meet the students, as Dr. Bickel pointed out. Meet the students, try to get the vibe of the place, because honestly, you'll know, all of us who applied to multiple places, sometimes we visited them. And I can just remember, sometimes immediately. You walk in somewhere, you're like, no, I will not be able to go to this place. Okay. And other times, you love it. So that's important advice. All right, so I'm gonna shift over to my colleagues and let them share anything else if they wanted to share, and then we can answer questions.
One of the things that I love that our department does is that we hold an annual symposium, and it allows you to envision what other people's works are like, and you can network with people with shared interests. And for anybody thinking about future careers, I think it's a good habit to establish to meet people that are outside of your school departments, because it broadens your network base. And later you just start to, rethink how you're going to write your statements of purpose. Or if you want to publish with people, that's a good way to find out who's publishing in what area. And it's helped me a lot. So I just want to encourage you to be part of these networks by going to conferences to meet people that share parallel interests.
And I will say, as someone who sits on admissions committees, and it's so important to get that kind of personal connection with folks. You know, if I'm sitting here and I'm looking at 50 or so applications, but I had this one student who contacted me, talked to me about the work that they're interested. I don't have to ask myself while I'm looking at the applications, hey, are they a good fit? Do we do the kinds of things they want to do? Because I've already talked with them. And so just remembering, being able to remember a student from having a personal connection is incredibly important in this process. You know, everybody talks about meritocracy and how all that works, but still it comes down to making those connections with people, because that way we get to know, you know, who you are as a student. And there's only so much you can learn in applications, but if you have that personal connection with somebody in that university, it's much, much better.
And another thing I forgot to bring up is that in a master's program, you will have a culminating experience, and it could be one of many things. So in our department, there's 3 different things you could do. One is a master's thesis, which is a beautiful paper with your original research, right? Which might range anywhere. If you did a quantitative thesis using statistics and all that good stuff, it might be on the shorter end. It could be 50 or 60 pages. And if it's, you know, if it's a qualitative thesis, you go out there, you interview folks, you do focus groups, you do content analyses, etc., or discourse analysis. It could be, you know, up to 100 pages. We try to put the limit on 100 pages in our department. That's our new rule, but we'll see. People really get into their work and they're writing, and we walk you through that through several semesters worth of work, okay? You're usually gonna have one person who works with you more intensely. That's your thesis chair or your culminating experience chair. But it's also important to note we have other options, and so will the programs you look at maybe. In the Cal State, I think a lot of the programs do have options. We have a project option where you could work with a community agency and do some sort of needs assessment, and then create a project that empowers yourself and others together, work together to do some action research or some other sorts of projects. And that one's for people who aren't that interested in going to a doctoral program, but they are really community oriented and would like to work in the community with folks for social change. Okay. We also have a third option that most folks haven't taken yet, which is a scholarly paper that kind of winnows down the thesis. So when you're looking at different programs, look at what is going to be the culminating experience, right? If you are interested in getting a doctoral degree, you would want to do something that demonstrates your original research, right, and your writing. But so I did want to point that out. And in terms of conferences, that's such a great point. And just, symposia. If you are right now, whatever your school has, it seems like you have a lot of great stuff going on. Get involved, right? So if you have some opportunity to present a paper, something you did in the class, then definitely do it, right? It makes you stand out in a crowd. If you were in sociology, you could look for local conferences like the California Sociological Association, I think Dr. Santos is it the president? Yeah, the president of that organization. So, a lot of you aren't coming, it's pretty, it actually is a big deal. It's a very big deal. So we have the connections. He's right here. But that's a local conference that is usually like in Riverside or Sacramento, and usually most of us in California can drive to wherever it is. But you would have the same in any of your disciplines. You would have a local conference that undergraduates could attend. Sometimes you can volunteer and they will waive some of your fees, right? But that's what makes you stand out in a crowd, doing just a little bit extra, right? Showing that you are enthusiastic. Do you love school? Think about that too. That's usually what I start out with, is like, do you love school? Do you love reading, writing? Do you get excited when you find that book that speaks to you about something? Those are great signs that you would be a good fit for graduate school. Sometimes you just haven't found the right subject to get you excited about it, right? So when you do, let's say that we all have that potential in us. So also think about that. Yes, okay, so I will now open it up to other folks. Any questions?
As you were talking about, the different options you can kind of manifest as part of your like master's program, whether it's the project route or thesis or a mixture of that. I was curious if you all have some memorable experiences or certain research topics that students have touched on, because maybe that can give our students an example of some of the work being done in your spaces.
Yeah, I could jump in on one of the projects because we just started to do the projects, what was it, 2 years ago, I believe, that became an available option. One of it was a student who had been working with veterans pretty much all her life. She came from a military family, and we have a lot of veterans on campus. And so she wanted to do programming for veterans to kind of help, every 22 seconds a veteran commit suicide. And so she wanted to create programs on campus and in the community to help veterans out. And so she did an art therapy workshops. I mean, she did a ton of things, and she even came up with her own book that shared veteran stories. So, veterans shared their stories about what it was like to be in the military, what it was like to come back into the civilian world, what it was like to attempt suicide. And so she created this book at the end that could be given to other veterans too, to show folks that they're not alone. And so that's one of the projects that was done. And then you have some of the other work done that's more on for folks who want to go into PhD work. I'm thinking of Martine Leva's work. Martine Leva is right now the director of Project Rebound. I guess it would be called the coordinator of Project Rebound. And Juan, you are technically the director now, I believe. Is that the official title?
Executive director.
Executive director, okay. And so his MA was fantastic.
That's right.
In that he went and interviewed other formerly incarcerated folks to kind of talk about their experiences. And, what does it mean, to create a prison to school pipeline? So he did his whole MA on a lot of the kind of community work that we were already doing. So he took the community work and made a scholarly MA out of it, a thesis out of it. And so those are some of the two memorable ones. But one of the things I love about and why I moved here, I used to teach at Cal Poly, but I came down here because I wanted to be part of that graduate program. And as a professor, it's awesome when you can see somebody who's doing this work in the prisons, somebody who's doing work with veterans. There's just so many different kinds of social justice work that our graduate students are doing right now that you learn from that. And you learn a lot by reading academic stuff, but for me, I learn a lot by walking with our graduate students through the process of creating their own research. And so I'm very proud of our graduate program and what we're doing down here.
I also love when people are inspired by their own lived experiences to produce research that is so meaningful. I had a student working on, a study of homelessness in North San Diego County, and what inspired him to do the work was his father being homeless, or other people living in communities that are riddled with gang injunction laws, and how they transform the community and they juxtapose it with ongoing circumstances like gentrification, hyper surveillance of police, to like laws that are manufactured to criminalize Black and brown bodies. So when you see research like that, you're thinking, damn, that's powerful. If you could use research as another way of throwing blows, that's the best way to do it. Because some of us used to get down doing our thing the way we did, but now you have the agency to go out and call truth to power and promote social and systemic change by having a praxis orientation in what you are creating. And like the works that, Dr. Bickel and Dr. Swan have articulated, to me, it's beautiful when I see my students kind of like nurture their own wings of liberation.
I appreciate you sharing that, because it ties it to the bigger picture of the why, right? And the so what. What are you going to do with this degree? What are you going to do with these experiences? Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of a student who shared that they're interested in doing the work. And I appreciate graduate programs and professional programs because they really are a bridge to do the work. I myself, didn't have much experience in higher education, and through field work and internships, I really got to see what I wanted to do. So for a lot of folks, that's the doorway. What would you recommend for folks that may not be in graduate school just yet, but want to do the work? We have brothers that are applying, to do work in the community, project-oriented things, but sometimes they don't have that experience, or they require that you're in a master's program, and they can get discouraged because they know that they're about the work and they know that they are a great fit for the work, but sometimes the very folks that are there to support maybe act as gatekeepers, right? As we talk about systemic issues and policies. So I'm curious, there's a wealth of information on this call, and I'm curious what y'all might recommend for someone that's not just at graduate school just yet, but knows that they want to be in those spaces and are trying to break into those spaces.
If I think I'm getting your question right, it's actually a really important question, and that is what you're able to do depending on your credentials and the way that credentials open up. So if you don't have an MA yet, do people take you seriously? And I can remember distinctly, even when I had my MA, I tried to do a lot of work in community schools, in court schools. And for those who don't know, community schools and court schools are often the alternative schools where young folks are pushed out of the traditional schools. They either go into court or community schools. And so I've always tried to do a lot of work in that area, but I found that I couldn't get into the schools, until I had that PhD behind my name. And it was amazing because I've been trying to do programming all throughout graduate school and all throughout my undergrad. But the way that the PhD opened the doors for me to do work in the schools, it was like, nothing had changed in me personally. But once I got that degree, it was like the red carpet started rolling out. Like, oh, we have this university professor who now wants to come in and do the work. But I was like, but I wanted to do the same work. I was going to be the same person before I had that PhD behind my name. And so there is that credential stuff. I think one of the most powerful thing is, as you're getting those credentials for those undergraduates who are kind of wanting to do that work, for me, I always attach myself to organizations that I saw were doing good work. And I know for our campus, that's Project Rebound. There's also a student group called Transitions Collective that does a lot of that work. So for me, it's always attaching myself to the organizations that are doing that quality work. So, I learn what's happening in the community. I learn what's going down. And after I've been there for a while, then I can start building my own programs from that because I've already built the networks. But me, I'm always a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. So if there's, when we were building our prison to school pipeline, we didn't want to create our own program where Project Rebound already existed in Cal State. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but we connected to other organizations that we could then bring down to our campus. And so for me, it's always, when I was underground, connecting myself to organizations. Once I get a lay of the land, then I can start building programs from that. Does that answer your question?
Very much, yes. Because I think sometimes folks might get discouraged along the way. But those who know they're on their path may go forward. But I know we lose some folks along the way because it's not easy work. Depending on however direction you take it, it's work that's meaningful, but it's also draining. And I think sometimes we don't recognize that as much, and we may set up our younger colleagues to fail if we don't let them know that, like, hey, this is not going to happen overnight. Which I appreciate, one of our brothers earlier today speaking on that, but that doesn't make it any less meaningful. But yes, you definitely answered that. I don't know if anybody wanted to add more to that, but thank you for sharing.
When I was done with my bachelor's, I started to work at a think tank out in Los Alamitos called West Ed. And when I was working there just as a research assistant, and even though I didn't have no doctoral degree, no master's degree, what was really cool was meeting people with those PhDs, and when they would tell me how much they were earning, I was like, damn, fool, like I want to earn that kind of money too, what's up? So that was really cool because I got to see not just the money, but how important social research was, because I was able to envision one day I'm going to be in charge of becoming the primary investigator for my own research. And I'm going to finally tell FU to the people that do research about my community, and I'll be able to put my own voice into it, right? My own perspective. So, it's frustrating growing up in Boyle Heights and just seeing all these people talk about our community who weren't even from there. What always pissed me off, because I'm like, wait, so they got to hear a different perspective. A lot of the people that when they do research in my community, they're going out doing safaris. They're like really scared of us. And that's how I see a lot of the research that's out there, right? So one of the things that I want to encourage all of you is that here's an opportunity as BIPOC people, as first generation people, to be the people with the voice, be the people that are representing our communities with dignity, pride, and honor. Because on many levels, we have people that don't give a shit about us, and they're just armchair scholars who make a name for themselves at the expense of people's misery. So what I tell people is all our lives matter, and it's important that we put our lives out there and, you know, and really unearth the beauty of our cultural wealth in our communities. So just want to just emphasize that for anybody thinking, well, why even get a PhD? Well, there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
And I know I've heard that a couple of times. So for folks that may have not heard, BIPOC, that's short for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, right? So definitely, I appreciate you sharing that, because we talk about self-advocacy in our space of MSA, but not just as individual self-advocacy, but as communities as well. So I appreciate that, Dr. Santos. I do want to open it up for any questions that folks might have. If there's a question on your heart that you want to ask, or you want to ask on behalf of somebody else, feel free to unmute yourself and share.
And if you're shy to ask any questions, you can always ask the question in the chat, and I'll monitor that to make sure we answer all those questions as well. Just real quickly, I put my email and that's my cell phone number online, so it's there, and use it if you've got any questions about our program, but also use it if you've got any questions about graduate school in general. I'm decent. I help a lot of students with law school, psychology, sociology, and social work, and criminal justice, of course.
And on that note, if you'd like to download the file, in case you don't want to copy and paste it, you actually click the ampersand sign next to the file in the text side, and right where it says the little document, you can download the text. So just as a heads up, if you don't want to keep copying and pasting and you don't want to lose any information, after this window closes, that won't be available.
Now, I wanted to just bring up another point that comes from one of your students. His name is Anthony. He spoke earlier, and I had the unique pleasure of meeting him a couple years ago. And as we were chopping it up, you know, we saw that we had a lot of lived experiences that were very similar. So I told Anthony, why don't you cruise out to San Marcos and I'll show you around. We could talk about the program, all that stuff. And he came to my class and was actually like an impromptu guest speaker, right? But what was really cool was that it was an opportunity for students to see that other students at other campuses are doing research similar to our own. And so, you know, what I want all of you to think about is that if you ever just want to have the experience of going to our classes, like just sitting in, Dr. Bickel does that a lot. You know, we bring people from the community to sit in, and what we're doing is we're planting the seeds of success. And not just that, but, you know, we're also allowing people to kind of like envision what life would be like after your undergraduate degree. So even in my Zoom classes, if you want to come through, let me know and I'll give you my Zoom addresses. If you want to just, you know, do something, be a participant, or just be a person that's quiet with your TV off or whatever, your camera off, it's all good too, but just know we offer that as an option.
I see here there's a question, what are some of the ways to ease the transition from undergrad to grad school, at least in terms of academics? That's a great question. The two biggest skills I tell both my undergrads and graduate students to get, to make sure you learn throughout this process. Make sure you know how to speak in public. And I'm an introvert, and so my fellow introverts, I understand the struggle of that. But if you can speak in public, that's not only going to help you in grad school, it's also going to help you get a job. So practice on your public speaking abilities. Anytime you have an opportunity to create research and present research, do so. And the other is work on your writing. I'm a big fan, especially given that Cal States have raised their tuition, I think about 343% in the last 15 years. And so given the cost of tuition, use every service these universities have to provide. Every university has a writing center. Use that writing center, bug them. Every class paper you have, go to the writing center. Start thinking about writing, because two of the biggest skills you can get out of both undergrad and graduate school is your ability to speak and your ability to write. And if you develop those two communication things, especially as an undergrad, you'll be ready for graduate school. And the other is for me, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is developing a growth mindset. You know, I know for me, growing up where I grew up, and there was a lot of self-confidence issues, even to this day. You know, I'm an associate professor now, and I still feel like somebody's going to call me up and say, hey, you know, that your hustle's over. They figured you out. You don't belong here. So I still get that kind of imposter syndrome. But I think it's really important to make sure you work on those skills so that you can bring your voice into our graduate program, so that you can not just bring your voice into our graduate program, but to other graduate programs, to other universities. Make sure that you bring your voice in a place where our voices haven't traditionally been there, especially for first generation college students. But those are the two skills if you could work on. And then the other one is developing that growth mindset where you stop telling yourself that you can't do things. I know for me, that was always, I would always tell myself no before I actually even tried. And so develop that growth mindset where you realize, hey, I can do this, but it's just going to take this work to do it. Here's the steps. And I can do this, but hey, I don't know how to do it yet. So I need to figure out who's my mentor going to be. I need to seek out mentorship so they can help me do these steps as well. But develop that growth mindset and stop telling yourself no when you're thinking about accomplishing your dreams. That I know for me, that was one of the biggest things for me. I kept telling myself no, 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 until I realized that, hey, you know, I was remedial when I got into this college gig. You know, my writing was terrible. I remember my first years, I cried a lot with writing because I wanted to be a good writer. But every time I got papers back, it looked like somebody had committed murder on them. There's so many red marks, and you know, and I told myself I couldn't do it. And luckily I had mentors who told me I could. And I think that's the big part, is make sure you go to a university that has those mentors, but also make sure you give yourself an opportunity to do those things you want without telling yourself no.
You know, for me, another thing that I want to emphasize, whenever I felt like that imposter syndrome was starting to grow on me and like I started to feel vulnerable, I would think about my families. You know, I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. And for me, as an undocumented immigrant for many years, I would always think about how difficult it was for us to coexist and the shit we went through. And like, whenever I felt like I didn't want to do this anymore, I would think of my parents a lot, or my community, or my homies that are locked up serving life, or all that stuff that, you know, really affected me as a youngster, really inspired me, because I have an opportunity to at least, you know, be the one that represents the community, or not be the voice for the community, but just be out there representing, you know? So that kept me going a lot, because I would always think like, since I'm like the only one that comes from my background in academia, I'm sure that if I fail, people are going to say the whole community failed. So I would always just be motivated by thinking about my mother, my father, you know, my sisters. And I had to set the example. I had to. And there was no, excellence was a must. And that's just kept me going. And also good friends, like you see Dr. Bickel here. If it wasn't for this vato right here, there's no way I would have finished a PhD. I needed my friends who were like, remind me, you could do this, you know, like there's more. I mean, even though like we have our own separate lives, you still need people that remind you and cheerlead you and say, you know what, keep going, fool, you got this. And as you keep going, you're like, hell yeah. And then you start thinking, well, I'm a grad student. People are looking up to me that come from my community, and they're asking me to mentor them. And I'm thinking, damn, like I know I have big shoes to fill. So not only are you trying to get your degrees done, but you got all these undergrads that are hitting you up for advice, like all of you here. And all of a sudden you become a mentor. You're writing the letters for, you know, for grad school, or you're coaching them on how to be successful. And you start to understand, like when some professors, I mean, let's just face it, you got some white people that really enjoy their advantages and really don't think that people of color or BIPOC folk deserve that. So you have to go the extra mile and fill in those shoes, because it is an intimidating world, folks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's rough. It's really rough. And people are always reminding you through macro and microaggressions that you don't belong. So it's important that we have our connections, you know, to stay strong. And that's why, like, I always talk about Dr. Bickel being a driving catalyst in my success, right? Because I had a couple of people that were my liberators throughout my pathway.
I think when we were going through graduate school, we'd have a conversation about at least once a week about quitting. And so I think, you always kind of feel that in a sense, but having that group of friends and that network, like Dr. was talking about, I've known this schools for 20 years now, and we were constantly saying, hey, just go another week, just go another week. Hey, you can get through this. All you got to do is this. All you got to do is this. And then ultimately to the point where we ended up in the same place.
Gerardo, you're muted.
Oh, appreciate that, Brenda. I was saying that I appreciate you guys sharing your truths, not just as professors, but bringing your whole selves and really what it took to get up there, up to that position. I think so many times when I'm talking to undergraduate students, something I often hear a theme is I have to change, or I have to become someone else, or to be successful now in college, I have to create something, and something I encourage them to consider is, you got to this point because of who you are already. So I appreciate you sharing, what it took to get to a professor, because sometimes people think, oh, what do I got to do so I can get there? But as Dr. Bickel was sharing, you've been committed to the work, and you've been about what you've been about for a long time. It's just more so accumulation of those experiences that lead up to your becoming a professor. So I appreciate you sharing that, both of you and your stories, because that's something that I definitely see with our undergrads, and I think it's something powerful to be shared in this space. So thank you, for real. I wanted to emphasize what Brother Robert had said earlier today in his keynote opening. For everybody in this space, surround yourself with people that want to see you win. I can definitely say for the folks in the call right now, these folks want to see you win. They've been super responding to coming into our space. So continue to build up relationships with folks that want to see you win. Thank you all so much. I do want to be mindful of your time. I know we've gone over 4 already, so I appreciate you all. You have our faculty's contacts, so if you have any questions or want to connect further, I know they'll welcome you with open arms. But with that,
And
appreciate each of you.
here, real quick, if I can jump in, just because I know, Rosa, you're thinking about law school, get into those LSAT prep courses. Make sure